All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the True North Audio Podcast. I am joined today by Luke Wilson from my own band, Bloody Pineapples. Thank you for joining me again for the first time.
Yeah, thanks for having me for the first time.
We'll just pretend it didn't happen last time and that we didn't spend 2 hours having great conversation, then it all just crashed. Well, actually, to be fair, it went through. It just that when I went back to the audio, it's all like weird and wibbly and cutting out. Yeah, we had a real dodgy interface last time we tried to do this, so now we're going to try it again and hopefully talk a bit more in depth about our singles and Vulgar Display of Fruit, which is our little EP, and about the show that we had, which we hadn't yet had last time we talked. So we have a couple more things we get to actually talk about, which is really fun. So thank you for coming on for the first time again.
I'm ready.
Man, so jumping right into it, I say we just start with how we got the band together and what we've been up to. So Bloody Pineapples, I know the name is ridiculous. It was kind of a silly thing that Toby and myself and eventually Jake and Zeke and Jay kind of joined on to. And eventually you as well as Tony, one of our other previous guests. We started off in URM as a competitive songwriting group. And we would have these competitions where it'd be like, hey, you need to write a song in the style of either like a producer or a band or something like that. And so we kind of slowly started bringing in more and more people until we ended up with this huge production. I mean, I think I counted 11 people on the EP.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So we started just kind of making these songs, and eventually we ended up with this sort of realization that we kind of like these songs and we kind of want to make this a real thing, like an actual band and not just us kind of doing this willy-nilly on the side. And so we put together a record and we started putting out singles and started playing shows. And actually, come to think of it, today is the 1-year anniversary of the first show we played.
It sure is, at the Wow Hall.
And you were there for that, weren't you? You were at the first show.
I was at the first show, yeah. That was the Bloody Pineapples live for the first time in person.
That's crazy, man. It's crazy to think it's only been a year and crazy to think it's already been a year.
I mean, a year since the live stuff. I mean, of the backlog that all of us have done with the competitions. It's been weird.
Yeah, I think technically we started in December of 2019, but I think the first time we were Bloody Pineapples, I don't even know if we were Bloody Pineapples on the first one in February, but I think we were, which would have been what is now Strange Eons.
I know by the time we did Moribunds, which was when I first joined, we were under the Bloody Pineapples name.
Yeah.
And that would have 2021 or 2020?
I think it was 21. I think it was like early 21.
Oh, I can check by the tornado, and you know exactly what I mean by that.
Yeah, yep. We talked about that last time too. Is we had that siren at the beginning, and you had run outside, and you had just. Oh, I keep saying that. It's a good story. It's a good story that you ran outside. I think you've corrected me on that this time and the last time we had actually talked about it. But yeah, you had recorded the sound of the siren out of your window, and actually. You know, it was a little clippy. It was a little, I mean, it's rough because it's just an actual siren and kind of recorded on the quick. We were like, oh, we should plan a tornado so we can have a siren for the beginning of our song.
The Fellowship, we should mention also.
Yeah. You were, was it Fellowship or Moribund or what? No, Triangles. Man, which one was the one that we did? You did like a making of video on your YouTube channel.
Triangles.
Was it Triangles? Okay. Yeah. And it was just like we had recorded us in the call and us kind of each doing our own little thing, actually making our parts for the song.
Speaking of seeing, I did find the picture. It was March 15th, 2021 was that tornado warning.
March, perfect.
Because if it hasn't already been mentioned, I'm from Kansas City and fly to Oregon for the shows.
Yeah.
So tornadoes are not out of the question by any means here.
Not for you.
My recklessness also isn't out of the question. So yeah, hear the siren about 3 a.m. So just stick the mic out the window, Not smart, but bad decisions make for good stories.
No, you ran outside. You were in the tornado. It was the most metal possible capturing of this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just waiting to catch a tornado so I can avoid airfare for the next show. But
exactly, just ride the tornado all the way there.
That'd be a fantastic story.
I don't think we're in Kansas anymore.
I know, my credit card bill feels the same way.
Man, I didn't pay nearly as much as you did to get out there for the most recent show we did. And boy, I feel exactly the same way, man. That was a trip. That was a trip. It was a great time though. So yeah, like I said, we recorded this in person the first time we did this. We were in your Airbnb, just hanging out, chatting, kind of holding the mics as much as we could. And it was just real basic setup, but it was really cool actually just being in person for the first time and actually hanging out with you guys in the band, because that was my first time actually playing with you guys, since you had you obviously, like I said, you've been playing pretty much all the live shows. I don't think there's any you've missed yet as far as I'm aware.
There's only one I've missed, and that was that was a show with such short notice I couldn't make it out. So
yeah,
I think they used my vocal tracks kind of like a backing track and called it a day.
Yeah. So yeah, this time around we were opening up for Chaosium, who's this really awesome band from Switzerland, as well as Colossus and Part-Time Superheroes from Alaska, which I'm really excited about. And last time we talked about it, we hadn't played the show yet. It was the day we were supposed to be playing. We were just kind of chatting it up. So now we actually get to talk about that, because that was a lot of fun. And oh boy, I mean, it was really great reconnecting with the Part-Time Superheroes guys and actually like chatting about, man, we got to get Bloody Pineapples up to Alaska, man. Like, I got to get back up there. Tony's already up there. So, you know, you said it's on your bucket list. We gotta, we gotta make it happen. And I think we got at least one, door in, 1 foot in the door, at least with the guys there. I guess 2 technically.
Yeah, no, definitely on the bucket list for sure. And yeah, at the end of the show, after Chaosium stepped off the stage, I was hanging out with the vocalist of Part-Time Superheroes. We swapped numbers, so we're gonna try and plan something in the future for that.
I'm excited, man. That was a good show. We had some troubles for sure. We were trying to figure out that in-ear system pretty much the whole night, I think.
That thing, for whatever reason, just did not want to connect.
No.
And a huge part of it is adaptability. Mm-hmm. Because if it wasn't for Tim playing on the drums, like, we're playing as a real band for that show, because I couldn't hear anything from my in-ears. It was basically coming out of the monitors, and I was just following what our drummer Tim was doing.
Yeah. And so my end, I was so like last minute on it that it was like we didn't even have time to prepare, or at least I didn't have time to prepare. It was like, I've been like planning to want to come out there and everything from way early on, but it was like 3 days before, and I didn't even know if I had a place to stay. And so it's like, I might be canceling, I might not be, or whatever. Like, it was just so all over the place. But like, we have a backing track that is just my vocal part again on Strange Eons. It's just me, one of the oldest and strongest emotion, like that part there. And that was still the backing track. We didn't even have the time to like take that out of the backing track and say like, oh, why don't you do that live? But I did get on stage for a keg part for Lion's Den, and the same thing is like, I get up on there and I realize I can't hear anything. Like, I got the drums and I can kind of hear you like doing the vocal parts, but I can't like hear any of the guitars or the bass. And so like, at first I'm trying to keep time, and then I was like, man, I gotta go goblin mode and just kind of keep up with the drums and just try to kind of like feel out what Tim's doing and like accent that and just go completely nuts, because like, I can't even hear the band. I don't even know where I am in this song, but everybody seemed to love it. It clearly went over well, even though like I'm up on the stage, like half panicking in my own head.
I mean, if you see a guy hammering a keg, no one's really going to question it at this point. I don't.
No. But
yeah, I mean, we did that song for the first time at Rivera Fest, which was back in July. It went over super well. But yeah, this time with us trying a new piece of technology, and it just took a crap on us, unfortunately. It's just all about adaptability. we ended up playing as a real band with little to no clicks, at least from my in ears.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that we didn't have to start over, despite the technology failing on us, like we clearly have the skills. Imagine what we can do when we're honed in and everything works for the next one.
Exactly. No, and that was a lot of the fun of it. You know, it's like we know how to adapt. And that I remember saying before, again, with Bloody Pineapples, it's one of those, like, I had decided for a while I was not going to be in a band. You know, I'd been in a lot of bands, and, you know, usually I was the guy not getting anything done, but it was one of those, like, we would have creative differences, or we would just not be like working on stuff at times, or whatever it would be. You know, we would just, you know, we kind of all just ended up in different little boxes. And it was kind of one of those things where I realized, you know, I'm falling in love with audio production and engineering and mixing and stuff a lot more. But Bloody Pineapple is just, something about it clicked. It was one of those, like, even if we weren't always on the same page creatively, we are on the same page philosophically. So we just work. You know, like, we all have different outlooks on life. We all have different, like, beliefs. We all have different styles of music that we jam all the time. We all have different influences. But at the end of the day, we just get together and we make the music that feels right to us, even if we don't know what that's going to be right away. And it's kind of one of those things where unexpectedly now I'm in a band.
That was also the fun of the collab smashes, because we would only get a few weeks to work on those.
Yeah, I mean, we would get 3 to 4 weeks per song, like, at most.
Yeah, and that really puts you in a time crunch.
Oh yeah,
especially because, like, I have a day job where I'm working 13, sometimes 15 hours a day, and then to come home and then just bang out a part. You know, that's what kept me going.
Yeah, and I mean, it requires commitment, but it also requires just, I guess commitment is still the correct word, like committing to the final track, and, like, you know, not overthinking it, not overdoing it, not, you know, I mean, it's funny too, because it's like we rushed out all these songs, but at the same time, when we got to the EP, we pull up all these files and we pulled up that spreadsheet, which was a lifesaver. So we had this Google Sheets that we had all the songs out on, and we had it, like, broken down by parts, and we would just check off the parts as they were done, and we put in, like, links to the actual files. There wasn't a lot we were changing, you know? I mean, it's like, I think Strange Eons, we changed some of the vocal parts a little bit, and we had, you know, a few guitar here and there, but I think it was mostly just like gluing the drums, reamping all the guitars, a few replayed parts just to tighten them up. But I don't think any of the songs got, like, majorly restructured, you know? So we were pretty much in that, like, you know, that 80%, that sort of 80-20 rule. We had that 80% mostly done in that month when we were writing these tracks, which is the other one. We have a new single that dropped the day that we did this last time, Was bin ich, which also has a video out now, which I'm really excited about, even though it's just Toby and Jay. We tried to film parts while we were there, but my camera was just way too grainy and not fitting the vibe of the other videos that Jay and Toby had. But the video looks great, and it's up on A to Z, which is Toby and Ruben's group. They're we've talked about them in the Vrock episode, but that's their, like, production team.
I learned the bass part for that song in, I want to say, 7-10 minutes just to play along to it.
Yeah, exactly. We just had
at least
it,
I know, like,
that. We're in House Dark, we're in Jake's studio, and he's got this little, like, you know, this quiet room, just this little soundproof kind of booth, and it's like the ceiling is maybe 6 feet 1 inches or something like that, just barely above the head. And
I had plenty of room.
yeah, brag about it. Jeez.
I will. It's the one time I can.
You're prepared for those tiny little soundproof booths. Yeah, we we just pulled out the bass and we're like, well, let's record a bass. Like, we got, you know, guitars and vocals and stuff. We want to get another guitar part. We want to get a bass part. And we definitely want to, like, have the whole band, kind of, more or less, you know? And so, yeah, we just pulled out a bass and pulled out the track, and we're just sitting there in House Dark, and you're just like, okay, so this is what we do for this part of the songs. We're just going to kind of play around with that, and Jake's playing around and, you know, just kind of playing along. And yeah, in like 10 minutes, you had the whole bass part down, which I could never do. I'm terrible at learning parts on instruments. It would have taken me like a week to learn that part, even though it seemed like it was pretty simple.
I mean, I'm good at always like identifying patterns. So I view most riffs as like in A B A C kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So part A, and then an alteration of part A again, and then a completely different one to help fill it in. So whenever I use stats, then it's easy to kind of just say, oh, I just have to memorize two things and then repeat.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I feel like for some reason that just doesn't, I don't know what it is. It just doesn't click for me. But yeah, no, I mean, I've always had that. Like, I've always been jealous of people who have that talent. I mean, like Tony, you sit him down, you'll sit him down in front of an instrument he's never played before, and he'll have it down in like 10 minutes. And, you know, even just like with a drum kit, you know, you sit him down, like, dude can't see at all. You just play every piece of the kit once, and he builds this like 3D model in his head, and he knows where everything is all of a sudden. It's nuts.
Yeah, that dude is talented for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And he got to work with us on a few of those tracks that you joined. I think, was he on more? I don't think he was on Moribund. I think he joined for Fellowship.
He was Fellowship, and yeah, Fellowship was his first one in the chorus. Yeah. And then he did the Triangles chorus also.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't remember if he and you had joined about the same time. I mean, I've known him for like 12 years or something now, but yeah, I think he had joined, I guess he had joined a month after you. And yeah, I sort of think of the two of you working together a lot. One, because you two get along very well, and two, because you joined around the same time. So like when I think of songs that I think of you two on, I think of those ones. I mean, Triangles was our first win. We'd had a couple of ones that had like gotten on the poll, but Triangles was the first one we'd actually won the contest on.
And that was also the other fun thing, doing the behind the scenes video. I just wanted to showcase like what the process was. Most bands meet in person. We are doing this all virtually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like me in Kansas, a couple of us in Alaska, Oregon, Toby in the UK, along with some other folks.
Ruben, like, I think, was on that one in Spain.
Yeah. Yeah. He did the solo for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are worldwide, and being able to do it virtually by saying, yep, right before I go to bed, I'm going to send off my parts. And then when I wake up, I know I'm going to have feedback.
Yeah.
Then you work and then go home and do the feedback. And everybody does that day to day. The song's getting worked on 24/7, which also came to our advantage when having a timeline of a couple weeks.
Yeah. And speaking of, I say we dig into the EP and just start talking songs and singles and kind of talk our experiences with those, since we have quite a few stories from their creation and from actually working them out into singles and everything. I think we only have a couple on there that were not URM, and I think they were just the covers.
I think that's the case. Let's see.
I mean, Twilight of the Thunder God obviously was not for URM. They would not have given us a chance of just doing them on a Marth cover, but...
Oh, I thought you were just talking about the EP.
Oh, I'm talking about any of our tracks. I think even of our singles.
No, our singles were URM. The only exception was Liquid Earth. It was the UK version that was submitted, and then I was asked to do a US version.
Yeah, that one's a fun one, actually. We can start with that one. That's kind of one of my favorites, is the UK versus US versions of Liquid Earth. The way that happened is they had created one version. It was just the UK version, which was really just like the Europe version. And I think we even had a couple of US guys on the original. Although I could be wrong on that. I think that might have actually been one of the months we decided to split off teams because we got too big. And URM was like, 6 people just won that last one. We're not going to let that happen again. So now you're only allowed teams of 4. And we already had like 15 people in the group, so we could just start breaking off into like sub pineapples. But the UK version was the one that had been made, and you guys are working on the live show, and I think Jake had hit me up with the question like, hey, can you give us some synths for this? Or something along those lines. And so I was working on those, and I posted them, or I'd sent them to Toby maybe. And Toby's like, well, I wasn't aware we were doing anything. I thought the song was done. And come to find out, Jake was kind of reworking it for the live show. So there was a bit of like confusion going on and a little bit of back and forth, I think, between Toby and Jake. And we just decided to make two versions. We're like, all right, let's do it US versus UK. You know, we'll do a double single and we'll let the fans decide.
Yeah, because Jake was the one who hit me up about doing vocals about it.
Yeah.
And all I had to work with was just the instruments. So I think it took me about a month to do it because I was working at the Kansas City airport at the time.
Yeah.
And during my lunch breaks or my hours drive home, that's when I would kind of collect my thoughts and get something out.
Yeah. And I think it came together very well. I mean, it's a really cool one because it's a great insight into, because it's such a big group, you also get the like different outlooks and different kind of imaginings of the same parts. And so you even get to see an idea of how a song might change just based on who's the main writing team. And I like that we can just kind of say, well, why don't we just have both, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, what it was is the UK version was submitted for when the challenge was the style of Gojira. Mm-hmm. And then my mind, who's not good at music theory or odd time signatures, just found a way to count most of the song into a 4/4 kind of beats.
So you did sort of a nested tuplet thing with it.
Yeah. And then I didn't really go off like a certain style. I'm just like, what would fit the song vocally?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the result I stumbled upon was.
Yeah. And I think it turned out great. And I love what you have at the end there too, that kind of just like chaotic vocal kind of.
The quote?
Yeah. Yeah. You had told me you kind of just went for it, didn't you? If I remember right from the last time.
Well, I mean, I couldn't count 4/4 into that. So I'm just like, okay, well, I don't want that to be instrumental. So what's gonna fill the space where the listener's not just listening to, something that may be comprehensible, may not be, depending on if you do music. So I'm just like, okay, well, how about we just do a spoken word kind of, it's about the world ending. So the music's chaotic. At least it is to me, since I couldn't follow the time signature.
Yeah.
But the quote kind of grounds it a little bit to where the pauses and the length of the pauses are intentional. That way it's kind of easier to follow when then the finale hits and then the song's over.
I think it fit very well anyway. I mean, it's one of those, like, sometimes it doesn't have to be, sometimes, I mean, I think again, one of my points I made on the last one was like, one of my favorite ever vocal performances is in the song Knife Party by Deftones. And there's just a part where Chino's just kind of going nuts. He's just sort of wailing and screaming and just doing his own thing. And it's like, musically, it's not, tight. It's not something you're going to listen to and go like, oh man, this is super well organized and composed. But I mean, it's just the emotion of it really, really hits you. And it to this day, it still sticks with me and still lives with me. And I think it's the same kind of thing. It's like, you don't always have to be super, super tight and super, super well composed. You just have to fit the mood. You just have to give it the energy that the song deserves. And I think that, again, that's another thing that we kind of just do well as a band. We don't argue too much about like, oh, no, Luke, can you redo that part? It's not like, it's not in time. It doesn't feel right or whatever. We just say like, yeah, I mean, does it feel good? Yeah, good. Tight, locked,
In fairness of that, no one's going to be a bigger critic, I should say, than myself.
I think we're all critics of ourselves anyway.
Yeah, but like anytime there's a song, I will overanalyze everything. And then if it gets to the point where I feel a certain way, what we do is we just put it up to a vote. And there's some votes where we've won, some where we've lost. And at the end of the day, if, more people like an idea that's not mine or that serves the song, that's the end goal for me anyways, to have the best products.
Well, I mean, it's the vote thing. I'm glad you brought that up. That was actually when you joined. It was something we did kind of from early on. And when you joined, it was still something we were doing, which was we would Like we would all do kind of parts. We'd start a song, we'd do parts for it, and then we'd vote for the parts we like. Or the way we do is we would mix, like each of us who wanted to mix would mix the parts we liked the most. We'd do our own sort of version of the song based on the pieces we had. And when we get into Strange Eons, we'll talk about that because that's one of the like worst offenders for that when we first made it. But we would put it up to a vote. We would put all the mixes up and everybody would just vote on which mix they liked the most. And then anyone who wanted to master would master the voted mix and we'd vote on the favorite master. And that's how it was, you know? And then Ruben joined and we stopped.
Yeah.
And Ruben just does all the mixing and mastering now.
Yeah, it stopped those votes.
It really did. I mean, it's one of the things, like I had the original master of Vospinish when we submitted that one. I think I had the original master of either Moribund or not Triangles. His Triangles was Ruben, his first one, I think. You know, but I think Fellowship I had the master of. And then I had quite a few of those ones. I tended to win the masters, though I rarely won a mix. But I think you won your first month. I think your mix for Moribund was the one we went with, and I think the same possibly for the Fellowship.
Yep.
So, I mean, you're doing pretty well until Ruben started. But I mean, that's the other thing too. We don't really have like an ego about it. We're all producers. Like pretty much everyone in the group is an engineer and a producer. We're all very used to controlling that in our own music. But, you know, we also all just, like you said, we want that best thing for the music. So when Ruben joined in, we just all heard it and like, that's our guy. You know, now Toby is usually the guitar guy. He's usually the tone guy. You know, you're usually the vocal guys, like you or Taylor or Tony if he's available, you know. But yeah, I feel like we've spent enough time together that we're really starting to kind of find everybody's roles, but nobody has like an ego about like, oh, but I wanted to, or oh, but you know, if Ruben mixes it, how am I going to show off how great I am as a mix engineer or whatever, you know?
And the other thing, not for nothing, but the original versions of Moribunds and Fellowship are on YouTube if you did want to hear those. They're on my YouTube channel, Annihilation Audio, and we'll put a link to those if you want to listen to them because they're cool. They're pretty much identical, and it goes to show how the original idea we had and then revisiting it later on, not really not much has changed except the quality of the mix.
Ruben just stepping it up for us. No, I mean, and that's the other thing too, is we have like old versions of songs floating around out there. You know, we have the original bassist on Killpop Culture, which I don't remember the name we originally had for that one, but we had put it out under the team name Square Root of Jake. That was like the one that wasn't a pineapple one for some reason. And I don't remember why we were not pineapples for that one. Maybe it was just because Toby wasn't there, so we just felt like it wasn't pineapples, maybe. But yeah, another Jake, one of the like 3 or 4 or whatever we worked with, did the bass parts for that one. And if you look it up, you'll find like, if you look up like Square Root of Jake URM or something like that, I'll find it and I'll link that one as well. But it's really cool too, because like you can hear, you know, his parts and what we changed from like that version of Killpop Culture to the version that we put out on the record, you know. And it's another just great example of, you know, hearing kind of how the evolution of these songs works in our own head and what we don't have time for or what we get crunched on or whatever, you know. I mean, like I said, some of it is just us committing to finishing rather than trying to perfect it, you know?
Yeah, because the competition was first, so it was get something together, but then revisiting it all those months and sometimes even years later.
Yeah.
Like the idea is still solid. It might just be you re-record a part to get it tighter, but not much else changes.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, jumping into the EP, starting with the opening track here, of course, we got Slain and Rage. Yeah, Strange Eons a little bit later. Slain and Rage, that was our second one as a project, and that's actually another one of the great ones where we all kind of made our own version of the mix, you know. And it's like I had all these parts put together. This one, if you listen to the Vrock episode with Toby, you'll know that this is the one that relates to one of the songs on his album, because Toby's thing is that he puts the Wilhelm. He puts a Wilhelm scream on every album he does. This is ours. Bloody Pineapple's Wilhelm on Vulgar Display of Fruit is Slain in Rage. And part of what Slain in Rage was became one of the songs on Vrach, if I remember what he was saying right, or part of one of those songs became part of what Slain in Rage was. And that's the one on the Vrach album that has the Wilhelm as well. And I believe also, if I remember right, it has Slain in the title. So, just really keeping that theme up. But yeah, Slain in Rage was us, and we had Jay, who is also the vocalist on Was bin ich, and hopefully we'll be doing some vocal parts for us coming up as well. He's been playing around. He had been really busy, but we actually started hearing from him again, which has been really cool. So we had, it was him, Jake, Zeke, myself, and Toby, and we had like different parts we were messing around with, and everybody ended up with a different mix. And the one I remember about this is that we had lots of layers of guitar, like stupid numbers of layers of guitar. Like, I think we had 3 people actually play a guitar part, and then we had like at least 2 or 3 different reamps for each of those parts too. Like, I had at least 1 or 2. Like, Toby had, I think, the Overloud. I think Toby and I both did a Misha, the like Toneforge Misha. I think we each had our own Toneforge Misha like reamp on those. And then I think I did one on my 6505, and I think Toby used his Ironheart on one. So it was nuts. It was ridiculous. And it is a wall of sound. And then, Arturo. Man, how could I forget Arturo? He was on the first couple tracks as well, and he actually did the drums for us. And it sounds like Jake has gotten to meet him. I have not talked to him in a little while. I miss talking to him. He's a really cool dude, but apparently Jake has been in touch.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, he had mentioned something about that, either when I was out there or maybe in the chat after we got back from Oregon. But yeah, he was saying something about like, yeah, man, I get to meet all the Pineapples. I've met you, and I've met Arturo, and I've met Luke. And so it sounds like he's been in touch at least at some point recently. And yeah, Arturo's a really sick drummer. And those parts were, again, just like really tight for how fast they were put together,
Yeah, you said wall of sound. I mean, it's a crazy song. It deserves nothing less.
Absolutely. Man, it was fun. It was one of my first chances to really dig into some like deep, like orchestral stuff and everything. And then of course, Toby is like, I want a Brahm, or I think he just said, I want the Inception noise or whatever. So I spent time trying to figure out how to make the Brahm, how to get that Inception noise. And I think it came out. And then I had the little choir there, which I have East West, the Hollywood choir, which I think was actually not in the original version. I think we added that for the album version. And Toby's like, can you get it to say like pineapple, bloody hell? So that is to the best ability what I have the choir saying. Is it's like this virtual choir, but you can give it actual lines to sing. And then of course, track number 2, jumping into Triangles. Here's one of your first tracks with us. And, like we were talking about earlier, this was our winner. This was the big one that finally gave us that victory that we had been so close to, but never actually had.
And the lyrics for that, those actually came up by accident, if you remember the story from the first time we tried this.
Yeah.
Is that before, actually it was right when I joined URM, I was looking through some of the posts, and there was a band who was looking for a hired gun, essentially, just someone to do vocals on one of their singles.
Yeah.
So I liked what the backing track was, got in contact with them, and they said, yeah, we like your voice. Go ahead and record it and send us over what you have. So this was before I had like an SM7B or any like real recording equipment.
Yeah.
So I went to a local studio in downtown KC and recorded some parts. And I brought a flash drive with me. That way I could take them home and mix them myself, send them over. It was one of the cases where the USB I brought wasn't compatible with the Mac that the engineer was using. So I'm like, okay, yeah, if you wouldn't mind just sending me those through Dropbox or email, whatever. But I had to get going to somewhere else.
Oh man.
You fast forward a month later, and I still haven't received the tracks. I'm hitting this guy up. I'm like, dude, it's been
It's
one
been a
week, two
month.
weeks.
Yeah.
Just name a time and place where I can drop by. I'll be there. And then I eventually just called the studio and said, hey, I've just explained the situation. And I think it was like the owner who got him to me in a day. And I did a quick mix in like 15 minutes, just processed and unprocessed vocals with the backing track, sent them over, and just never heard anything from the bands.
Yeah.
So I'm, yep, they dropped me. Fair enough, because that's a ridiculous timeline.
It's one of those things that really sucks too. You know, I mean, it's brutal going through all that effort and all that headache and just not even being able to deliver the final thing or getting ghosted or whatever. It's like you put in so much effort and it's not even your fault that it doesn't come through, that it doesn't actually pull together. But
it did turn out in our favor, because those lyrics I wrote for them were the lyrics for Triangles. I just had to alter a couple things and change it for the different tempos.
Yeah.
And it turned out to win the international competition. So I will take that any day. Hopefully it happens the second time.
Hopefully you just write the song and get the international win rather than having to go through all that extra BS. But
yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, that's the other thing too. Like sometimes you put a lot of work into something and where it comes together is not where you expected it. I mean, it sounds like you weren't even expecting to be in Bloody Pineapples and doing all the, collab smash stuff when that happened. But here we are. Now you're in a band that you're flying halfway across the country to play shows with, to open up for an international act from Switzerland.
Yeah, and I will take the hits that the studio gave me and definitely trade it for this any day.
Also, if you do run a studio, real talk, have something. Like, you can't be dragging your heels that much on that. I've made that mistake in the past too. Like, I get it, but at the same time, like, oh boy, that's an easy way to lose customers and burn bridges and develop a bad name for yourself. So, like, if you got work for somebody, and they're gonna get it, just have some. Dropbox is real easy. It's very straightforward. Also, if you want to get files, I think exFAT is the format that is compatible with both Mac and Windows. So if you are unsure, just have a exFAT hard drive or thumb drive or just something. You shouldn't have any problems if you're a musician in this situation.
Yeah, because that was the reason I brought the USB drive in the first place, because I didn't think that would be a factor. I could just get it and go, but
yeah,
not quite.
Yeah, not everything's universal, unfortunately, and frustratingly, and sometimes fortunately. But yeah, I mean, those little things, you never, again, goes back to adaptability though, like you were talking about earlier, you never know what's going to work and what's not going to work. So
yeah, as long as you can control everything you can control, then that's less stuff that you have to worry about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think last time we talked, this actually got us into quite the tangent about, being able to use like cheap gear and stuff like that and not really having to overthink what you're working on. And, it's one of those, like, a good song is going to beat anything else, like people are going to care less about the mix than they are going to care about a good song, and it's kind of like you can get great results with stock plugins. You can get great results with really minimal tools, and so that's another one of those things I think that is important for people to know. And we talked at length last time about that. We got pretty into the gear talk. I think we talked a lot about FabFilter, which is one of my favorites, and Soothe, which, I mean, that's one that took me a long time to get. I don't know how I lived without it before, but I mean, I did, I know a lot of people who still are. So,
because I think right now I'm just using either dynamic or EQ or a de-esser, because I still have yet to get Soothe.
Yeah. I find with some stuff, I find that Soothe, you can kind of get the result if you do like multiband compression. Even if it's just like your stock multiband in DAW or whatever, assuming you have one in DAW. But if you've got a multiband compressor, I find that sometimes like compressing the top end kind of helps just soften up and smooth out some of that harshness. But yeah, I mean, it's like Soothe Soothe is really, really handy, but it's not old. You know, plenty of people are making great records for decades without it. So I mean, it was one of those. I think one of the URM ones. I think it was like the old man. I want to say it was Bring Me the Horizon, maybe. You know, or one of those bands from that era that we had, and I I ended up you know, saying like, man, Toby, when did Soothe come out? Because I can't imagine mixing this song without Soothe, but the song was older than Soothe, so clearly they figured it out.
Yeah, it's the skill set that's going to take you places, not all the gear you have or
Yep.
any of that.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. The great thing about Bloody Pineapples, again, similar kind of thing. It's like, you can be the best vocalist in the world, but you know what works even better for a band is just being on the same page one way or another, like being able to communicate or even just being able to work with each other's ideas. Like, I mean, I've worked with some really, really talented dudes, probably more talented than half the Bloody Pineapples, but I mean, Bloody Pineapples is the one putting stuff out. That kind of matters too. I mean, the thing is, there's some really great performers who are too much of a perfectionist or whatever too. I mean, it's like, you know, the talent is part of it, but at the end of the day, it's really about being able to put together like a cohesive group of people and have a cohesive vision, even if it's chaotic and you don't know what the vision is yet.
Kind of a weird segue away from the EP, but it's going into the track that I'm working on that you and I kind of made sense for at the Airbnb.
Yeah, that was another thing we were working on when we were out there. You have a new track. We should hopefully have it coming out fairly soon. I don't think we have any new parts we need. I think we just need the bass and drum parts to get tracked, and we're pretty much set.
Yeah, all the parts are there. They've been sent to our community folder, so anyone can download them. And yeah, we're just waiting on the because like for that one, I tracked guitar, bass, programmed drums, did vocals. You helped me do some of the synth work.
Yeah, we and that's another one that was fun. Like, the synth work is not super complicated, you know. For the most part, like, the time we spent on it was not how much time are we going to spend getting this part right. It was how much time we spent like tuning the sound, like really dialing in exactly the synth tone we wanted. You know, it's like we figured out the notes real quick. I mean, it was we were sitting. There was a part of it we were doing in Jake's studio. We were at House Dark, and we're just sitting playing around. And it was like, okay, what are the notes in a train whistle? Okay, we pull that up, and we're kind of playing with it up and down the register a little bit. But we spent a lot more time trying to like build that pad than we did figuring out what notes were in the whistle. That was kind of the fun of it too. You know, that like being able to work in person when we've done synth stuff together before or with any of these tracks. It was a little bit different process. I spent some time like doing that on my own, but actually getting that feedback, like sitting in the room together, was really fun as well. And that, I think that kind of changed our process a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely did, because with its like with music in general, if something either hits my ear right or it doesn't.
Yeah.
And a good part of that is credited to me not knowing a lot of theory or more of the technical aspects of music.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a part where we have a heavy riff, our good drums going on, and I just wanted a steady synth to kind of add a texture to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first thing I thought of is like, what are the notes in a train whistle? That's exactly what I said. And we Googled it, we put the notes in MIDI, and then we had the sound in there. It was just kind of shaping it to having something reminiscent of a train whistle, to where it would just add it subtly enough to where you don't necessarily notice it when it's there, but when it's gone, it's like, whoa, let me play that back and see what that was.
When it's gone, but when it's there, it's not. Subtlety is such a great thing in music, and I love working with people who have that like mindset of just like it's the feeling, you know. It's not about like a really sick synth part, you know. And again, going back to the ego thing, like being able to work on that and go like, that's an awesome idea, and not go like, well, I want my synth parts to be heard. You know, like understanding the role of what you're doing in the song, I think, is really important. And yeah, I mean, I think feeling it out is a really good way to do it. I mean, just, you know, it's the oh man, I almost said Glenn Fricker. I mean, I don't think Glenn Fricker's quite as of this mindset as Warren Hewart. But Warren Hewart, he'll say like, if it sounds good, it is good. That's kind of his mantra. And I think that that's kind of how you approach your music. You just sit there and you write it and you go, does it sound good? Good. And
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. And you added the kegs because I finished and put those out since last time we did this as well. Those are actually live in the store and people can buy them or download the light version and get the free ones. But you put some keg impacts in, and then I did some like I guess you could say kind of like genty, super tight, chuggy, like synth guitar stuff, kind of like, like Mick Gordon style, that like doom style thing. I put a layer of that in that we can add into taste as well. And same thing, just a texture, it's just to like thicken up that guitar part a tiny bit in the couple spots that it comes in,
Oh yeah, the rumble. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Like you want to feel it. It's not about like hearing it in your face. It's just about like that. You just want that guitar part to hit just a tiny bit harder and just a tiny bit thicker than the other parts and just, get into you. Yeah, I'm really excited to get that track out. That one's going to be really cool. And I don't think we're changing the title. So I think it's safe to announce Broken Spectre.
I mean,
unless we change that.
Well, it's official now. So might as well go with it after this many months.
I mean, no rules. We can change it if we want. Not beholden to this podcast.
And just for anyone hearing that's Brocken Spectre, BROCKEN SPECTRE. Because people are like, oh, you're Inspector for Brock? No, because that's always how I've told people. I'm like, no, Brock Inspector, you have to see it written instead of heard. It's one of those weird English things, if you will.
There you go.
But yeah, no, I'm super excited about that one. I wrote that one to kind of be a combination between Oceano and Humanity's Last Breath, that gives any of a preface to what might be coming out pretty soon.
Oh man, when Ruben puts that mix in, it's going to be nuts.
Yeah, because I think I have one of your keg samples in it, but I made like 4 tracks going through various versions of Saturn just for different impacts.
Yep. And I think you also said you use Submarine on one of them to get that like low end impact as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I think I turned the -1 octave all the way up to 12, if that says anything.
Aha, nice.
Whether Ruben keeps it that way will be a different story.
I mean, I think we both trust that Ruben is going to make the right decision, whatever it ends up being. And so I'm excited. Yeah, no, this has been a really fun one to work on, and it's got me really stoked on the record. We got a bunch of us working on it, and we got at least a couple guests coming on, a couple friends of mine at least, and hopefully some more. I don't know what our guest situation is looking like. I guess it all kind of depends. We got a lot of people we want to get on, but I think a lot of people are probably going to be out of our price range at the current moment.
For the new albums, we should mention.
Yes, for the new album. Yeah, I think that ultimately we're going to have a really good album either way. And of course, we were talking, since we're having so much fun hanging out together, we're already like, well, the next album's got to be in person, right? We gotta get as many of us out there to Eugene, or Toby was joking like, what am I thinking? Middle Farm. But I mean, if we get out to the UK or something, that'd be really cool. Or I think that doing it in person would be really fun. It'd be a great chance for us to actually work together in a way that our workflow kind of has never been able to benefit from. And I don't know. There's just so many plans. We're talking about touring. We're talking about playing more shows. We're talking about getting together in person and recording.
And then did we want to talk about...
You're going to let us in like we let John in.
I was just about to ask.
Great transition, Kiko. No.
Yeah, that one is my favorite mix sonically on the EP because the bass is just absolutely massive.
Yeah. Oh man, that one was a crazy one too, because that was like the thing that one has is that there's a little bit of a like slight kind of inconsistency in the direction it was going. So we wrote it for Deftones. That was the challenge. And when we got back to it, we were kind of thinking like half Deftones, but some of us were thinking like Loathe. And so we ended up getting a little bit of a mix of the two. And I think that poor Taylor was just trying to parse what the actual expectation of the track was going to be. But that was a ton of fun to make and a huge challenge for us because, you know, especially like when we did the original track, like none of us could do Chino's vocal style. Like none of us could really nail that. And man, we struggled. We struggled a lot with that one. I think that one almost didn't happen too. I think we actually got really close and weren't sure if we even had the parts. But also that was the one that Jake, from UK Jake is what we call him. You know, I got US Jake and UK Jake. UK Jake played the drums on. And that one's actually got live drums too, just like Slain and Rage and Strange Eons. And man, those drums came out so good. He just nailed those drum parts and that drum sound.
You know, everything about that instrumentation is perfect, just down to how it was mixed, the synths in the chorus.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny too, because it reminds me of, you know, so this is the first one Taylor jumps in on. And Taylor shows up in other tracks, of course, too. But this Taylor was a fun one because I think his first month was, the prompt was Joey Sturgis. And we did like a dumb cover of Bringin' Sexy Back that was all just, oh boy, I also just realized it's all puns about like audio production, which so is We Let John In. So I think that Taylor has almost been like typecast into being the vocalist for songs where we use lots of puns about audio to sing a song about somebody from URM. As John, if you don't know who John is, you're who's John? Why did you let him in? What's going on? John, the John in question is John Maciel, who was the guy who ran the collab smash, the contest we're doing. And he was like a big URM like moderator, kind of like the group leader for a while in the like Facebook group and everything. And so it was kind of like a like salute to him for basically setting this whole band up with the contest and everything.
I remember he would also do the one-on-one mix crits.
Yeah.
And that was the only one I ever did, and it was with him.
Yeah, I've done a few of those. The older ones I did, like there was John Douglas for a while, and there was John, and I think Joe has been doing it for like 2 years now. Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing when I had it with him is I was showing him an idea I had back in like 2019.
Mm-hmm.
He put like 5 instances of Saturn on the mix, and he's like, "Bro, I'm gonna shoot you straight. The guitar got no balls."
So that's where your Saturn addiction started. Oh no, you let John in, and he gave you all the Saturn.
No, I had to buy Saturn like everyone else. The Saturn addiction came from Buster.
Yeah, Buster Odom is he's pretty famous for his heavy use of Saturn all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think of you when I think of Saturn a lot. You and Toby both, but you especially, because you're like Buster. You are somebody who just, you like your Saturn.
I mean, that was the first fab filter I got.
That's a good one to get. That's a really good one to get. It took me a bit too long to get that one, and I'm happy I have it now. But man, I I started with Pro Q like everyone, and Pro MB, which is like one of my personal favorite plugins of all time, and then Pro L and Pro C, and those are both fantastic too. I got the like mastering bundle, but yeah, Saturn is a good one to start on, because that one, there's not a lot of plugins that can do that. I remember Toby used to kind of cheat Saturn using, oh, what was it? It was Kilohertz.
Oh yeah.
He used multipass with like distortion on different settings in the multiband kind of configuration. I
do remember that.
Yeah. I mean, it's great too. Kilohertz is fantastic. I recommend it to anybody, but Saturn is Saturn. I think the big thing is that multipass, at least when I've used it, I've noticed that it has a kind of hard cutoff. So it kind of chops off that top end. Saturn doesn't. And that's a big advantage of Saturn over multipass when you're trying to do something like that.
Yeah, just long story short, get Saturn, you'll thank us later.
Yeah, 100%. Get it on snare, get it on kick, get it on cymbals, get it on guitar, get it on vocals, get it on the master bus, get it on Saturn.
Get it on bass.
Yep.
Get it on synths.
Everything.
There's really nothing it doesn't belong on.
For real. I mean, saturation is just one of those things. Like, if you need more, saturation is going to give it to you.
Yeah.
Man, now we come to Strange Eons, track 4. And like I said before, this was the first one we ever did. This would have been before you joined in. This was, you know, the original team, the OG. I don't think Taylor was on this one yet. Or at least if he was, he didn't give us any tracks. But this one, or Jay, I'm sorry, Taylor was definitely not on it yet. Yeah, Jay would have been, as he was on Slain. So this one, I did my opening part, and I have this like really old 1950 Shure Green Bullet, which I love, and it's just great for these like creepy, like old radio style, kind of like, you know, whatever, narrations and things, or if you just want something that's got that like weird, almost natural saturation to it sometimes, and very filtered. It's a harmonica mic, and it's also a really old harmonica mic. It's the perfect mic for that sort of thing. And so we like did this sort of ramp up where like we slowly blended in more reverb as that went on. But this one, again, this is one where we did a lot of like layers, you know, lots of guitar tone parts. And I remember specifically we had 2 different people doing vocals, and it was Toby and I want to say Zeke was the other vocalist on this one. Each of them just had their own vibe. And the big thing about everybody's mixes that was different is who chose what parts, you know, like somebody would be like all Zeke or all Toby, or somebody would be like, you know, Zeke here and Toby there, or mostly Zeke and a little bit of Toby or something like that. I think mine was like pretty much all Zeke, but I think I had Toby on the bridge or something like that. But while you were not on this originally, you are on the album version, because we just gave it to you.
Yeah.
We're just like, this is Luke's song. We're just going to let him crush this.
Yeah, because when I was first brought on, we did those 3 all the way up to triangles. Yep. And that's when we started talking about going back and re-recording.
Yeah.
So that was my first time to hear.
I think it was Ruben. I think it was when we brought Ruben in is when we started actually like really thinking about that.
Yeah, and then once that Excel sheet was created, that shows basically what you'd see in a studio, what they have on the whiteboard.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I would click the links and hear the songs for the first time.
Yeah.
And like with Slain and Rage being modeled after Shadow of Intense, I'm like, oh, I definitely got that one.
Oh, yeah. No, that one.
It just, the vocal contrast, like purposely starting with the high to not give away the lows, and then having the lower vocals punch you in the face whenever those come in.
Yeah.
And it just creates a heck of a roller coaster.
Yeah. And I mean, just the way that song came out in the end, that's one of the ones that definitely changed a lot from its original version. One of the other things that was fun about it is we have that like layers and layers and layers of that like intro riff that, just that sort of acoustic sounding piece. Like, I played a 12-string guitar on that. There's like a Moon guitar on that. There's, I think, a vibraphone or something like that. There's, mountain and hammer dulcimer. There's a synth layer to that, and there's like a weird kind of wobbly, like slightly out of tune synth layer to it. Like just layer after layer after layer. And I think a lot of us added layers into it as well. That was another, we were all about that, like layers and walls of sound early on. But no, I think that one came out great. And that one, like, I think of that as being Zeke's song, because I think he wrote a lot of it. I think he was the one who actually initially wrote it, and he was super involved in its creation. And kind of on top of that, like, Zeke is really into that, like, eldritch horror kind of storytelling, which it has. It kind of evokes that, like, Lovecraftian kind of, ancient sort of just fear and darkness or whatever. And that was like very much Zeke's thing. So like I always think of this as being Zeke's track. This is really his.
Like for the longest time, I didn't know that it was you on the spoken word intro of that. I thought that was Toby or someone.
I think that you learned that when I was in Oregon, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. Yes, I think I started doing it like, that is you.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely hit my ear different. I'm like, oh, okay, this is different.
Wait a second. Well, I mean, it doesn't help that I put on that accent. I was going for that kind of like, old BBC broadcast talking about, just whatever, the sort of thing that you would sample in a song. Like, typically you would just dig up some like old podcast, or not podcast, good Lord. Dig up some like old radio spot where, somebody's introducing the like BBC radio drama version of, Dracula or something. And it's just, some old kind of RP accent, just one of the oldest and strongest emotions of mankind is fear. One of the oldest and strongest fears is the fear of the unknown. Just like kind of, but then give it that old radio effect. So I just kind of going for that vibe. Because again, I think Zeke wrote that too. I think Zeke was the one. I think Zeke did like whisper parts for that.
They were he did do whispers. They were like pan.
Yeah, and they were like spinning around with the old radio broadcast, which is so cool. Like, man, the vision for that one was really fun. I'm really happy with how it actually turned out in the end. And I would love to do more of that. And if we end up getting more stuff from Zeke, I think it'd be really sick. He's got great vision for music. Dude's a great songwriter.
My only thing with that song is it's so much fun, but in hindsight, it's too short.
It's so short.
But
yeah.
Then you come in with the problem, like if we would have made it longer, it wouldn't have made too much sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that in the end it works, but I definitely get that. And I mean, I think that's also part of just it being our first track. We hadn't had the time to really, end up with those like 6-7 minute epics like we sometimes can or whatever, we do it more and we start getting comfortable with it. But yeah, I think early on it was just like, let's throw some riffs. And I think we spent so much time like layering things that we spent less time finishing the track. But I mean, yeah, like you said, I mean, what would we have done with it? So it's like, it feels short, but I mean, it feels like it's the length it needs to be.
Yeah, because that's when URM then said, hey, it has to be 3 minutes because we pumped that thing out at 2 minutes, 17 seconds.
Yeah, right.
I feel like we're the ones responsible for a lot of the rules. It's like, hey, that song's too short. They got to be longer. Okay, 5 people, 1 triangles. Now you can only do teams of 4.
We are the Timmy Turner of the URM world. We're the one that all the rules are for. The next one, Avenger of Blood, is a fun one too, because that was another one of those US versus UK ones. But the US version isn't out anywhere. And I mean, that's fine. Honestly, the US version I don't think is quite put together enough to be out anywhere. But the prompt there was Slayer. And of course, the UK guys got on the chart with it, or on the vote, on the poll with it. But the US version had a very fun sort of story about it, which is that we rushed ours. And when I say we rushed, like we like had kind of a riff like for a while, and then that riff we just kind of sat on it, and then like the day it was due in, we're like, so are we gonna finish this? What's the plan? Do we feel like this is doable? And so we just rushed this together, and like Mark, the guy who did the vocals, he's driving to work and he's recording like an SM57 on his phone into GarageBand, and he just sends me the GarageBand project. And so I open that in Logic, I edit all the vocal parts down and get them all together, and then I bounce that out into the master project. And you were the one who did drums, right? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You're like, we need drums. We can't put this out without drums. Nobody's gonna, So you're rushing the drums, and I think we got it in right before it closed, or maybe an hour before it closed, something like that. It was a really tight deadline, but
yeah, no, that was our 24-hour turnaround.
Yeah.
We had that riff for weeks, and then there was just nothing.
Yeah. I mean, it feels great to be able to turn around a song in a day. It's mental. I feel like we do it even faster if we're doing it in person. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those, like, again, that adaptability. And that, like, for me, that was kind of the moment. Like I said, I mean, it's not the best track we've ever done. But at the same time, like, that was the moment where I was like, man, we really are just on this. We are adaptable. We've got this. This is Bloody Pineapples for real. And then, of course, Team UK, Avenger of Blood, that was their entry, and they just nailed it.
because like I said, we had that riff for weeks, no communication.
Yeah.
And then Mark sent in vocal parts, so I'm like, okay, well, someone's got to do drums, and I was having dinner with my family at like Red Robin or something. I just rushed home, hammered out the drums in like an hour or something. I don't even think I mixed them. I just use the same free drum sample program I've had for years.
Yeah.
And then just sent over the MIDI.
I don't even remember what I used on it. I think it was might have been the like really special Ultimate Drum Production version of Drum Forge. But yeah, I mean, it was just, the whole thing was just like real fast, real rushed together. Just like, we got to get this done.
The impressive thing is,
I don't even have, neither of us were there for the Avenger of Blood, so neither of us really have much in the way of stories for that one, you know? I think that one's Toby. So that's the other thing too, though. We got like Slain and Rage is like Jay and you, and I think Toby might have a vocal part, maybe. I could be wrong.
Yeah, he did some inhales where I do that guttural at the
that's right. And then Triangles has you and Tony, and we let John in as all Taylor, and Strange Eons is all you again. Avenger and Blood, we got Toby now, and you know, I got the vocal part at the beginning of Strange Eons, and then finally Killpop Culture, that's all Taylor, but I don't think Taylor was on the original. I don't remember who we had on the original though.
I don't either.
Maybe I could be wrong. Man, I feel terrible for forgetting that too. You know, it's whoever it is, just like, man, why'd you forget me? What are you doing, man? You know?
And you'll get a comment later.
Yeah, there we go. Somebody in the Bloody Pineapples group is going to be real mad when I put it up, if they even remember. But no, I think Killpop Culture, you know, I feel so bad. I can't even remember the original name we had for it either. But I think it was called Put the Hair on It.
Oh, the Static X one?
Yeah, so that was the prompt. It was a Static X song, and it became Killpop Culture, and we put Taylor on the vocals and like reused some of the parts and redid some of the parts, and like that one's another. It's like I was involved in the original, but I was not actually really involved in the new album version. So I don't even know what all went into that. As I think that was mostly between like Jake and Taylor, if I'm not mistaken. You know, I mean, maybe Toby redid the guitars, I think, but maybe. And I don't even know if that was the case, you know, but it's like the original, like I said, for some reason that was not under Bloody Pineapples. And I think it was just that we had, like, some of us, like I said, myself and Jake had formed a team, and we brought in another Jake, and man, I feel terrible for forgetting everybody's names. But yeah, we did the original of that one under Square Root of Jake. And like I said, the original version's out on YouTube. The other Jake put that one out, and you can listen to that. And it's pretty cool to actually hear the vibes. That one changed quite a bit. And I think both are really awesome and both are really solid. The original version of Killpop Culture, that was one of those ones that I was sharing with my friends all the time. You know, like when we first did that one, I was just showing that to everybody, and everybody was so stoked. Like the whole team was really stoked on it, and it was one of our better tracks, you know, and that one's one where it really felt like we were kind of coming together too. And then, man, we got all these singles too. Like we got Avenger of Blood as a single, but I mean, we already covered that one. We have Moribund, which we've talked quite extensively about. That one's, you know, again, that one's one I think of when I think of you, because that's one of yours. That's like, you are part of that pretty early on.
Yep, that was my first month with Bloody Pineapples.
Yeah. Man, that was a fun one to make too. That's one of my personal favorites. I like the heavy stuff, so I mean, I'm really into Moribund. I'm really into Triangles, and everybody. That's the other thing. Everybody has different ones that they like. Like Moribund, Triangles, Slain and Rage. You know, those are some of my favorites. Vospanish, the US version of Liquid Earth. But I think, like, you ask Toby, you know, and Toby will give you a whole different list. You know.
I mean, I've been jamming Vospanish for the longest time since that came out.
Oh, Toby's daughter loves that song, especially the video. So again, we'll put the video for that one in the links below as well. But Toby, he played his part with this Optimus Prime mask, and he showed it to his daughter, and he's like, hey, check it out. You know, it's me playing. It's like, Daddy, that's not you. That's Optimus Prime.
He also spray painted the entire helmet black, we should mention.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's got it like kind of, he's kind of, it's like the Optimus Prime shape, but he's kind of like worn it and made it look like kind of that like gunmetal kind of look and everything. It's really cool. It looks fantastic. But yeah, so he's been telling us like, oh man, my daughter keeps asking us to put on the video where Optimus Prime plays your song or whatever. It's like,
she keeps asking for the Thor song also.
Yep. Oh man. So, well, you know, I mean, she's probably the best judge. Like, if we can please her, I think that we've done it. We've made it. So, you know, I mean, like, every time we see a video of her just jamming out to Bloody Pineapples, it is the like cutest and most wholesome thing. I just love to see that pure joy, that just like, just listening to our music.
Well, that's because like I get that from it. So it's always nice when you see other people get that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just really reaffirming.
Yeah, just to see a little kid smile at something like that, it's like, she'll do just fine in life. She has a good upbringing.
Exactly. Man, then we got the Fellowship, and that was, of course, again, that was your second one, and that was one of those ones. Tony is all over that one, and that was a fun one for me because I have this like entire like almost completely inaudible like counter melody going on underneath, like on the piano and stuff. And it's funny too because like the chorus parts, I wrote this like entire part with like violin and cello and bass and piano, and it's meant to just be this texture. So it's like a whole song that you don't even get to hear because it's really just meant to be kind of felt underneath the actual chorus. But you guys have been using the verse parts where I like doubled up the guitar parts with this like just big, angry, like reverby synth. And that's like the intro to this song in the live shows now.
I mean, a lot of the synth stuff that you've sent for the songs, I've used as like preludes to when those songs are about to go online.
Yeah, which is really cool. Like in the live versions, we got those backing tracks, and the backing tracks will be anything from like parts by guys who aren't able to make the show because it's a big project and there's a lot of people involved, you know, and so there's inevitably going to be backing tracks. I mean, like the entire Vospin-ish live was just using Jay's original part.
Because when we did the first couple shows, we had Clint, who was a second vocalist on stage. So he memorized that song, I think he said 3 days. So I can do instruments in 10 minutes, but an entire language, not a chance. So he performed that for the first couple of shows for us.
And then we didn't have Clint, so we had to use the backing track for his part.
Yeah, he wasn't able to make the last one, so yeah, we just did the backing track for it.
Yeah, which is, I mean, that's just how it goes. You know, it's not the end of the world. We know how that is one of the kind of downsides of the size and scope of our band. You know, we got Twilight of the Thunder God, which is another one you've got a video on.
Yeah.
You did the video on your vocal layering and how you actually voiced that.
Not only how I voiced it, but kind of the mentality of how do you match the cover, but make it unique enough to where you don't feel like you're hearing the same song twice.
Yeah, not a carbon copy. You're making it the Bloody Pineapples version. We got another cover in the works right now. We're working on Slipknot. We're working on Duality. And we've been really trying to figure out how we're doing the vocals because it's been like, we've not been able to settle on the strategy that's going to work quite yet. I think we do actually have something now. We got a couple fallbacks now, but yeah, I mean, it is one of those things you really got to think about. And we, yeah, when I was out there, we were watching that at House Dark where, you know, you, me, and Jake were just sitting and chilling and watching that video one of those days. I remember, I think it was right after we got back from the store and I'm just sitting there munching on peanut butter or something while watching you like go through your methodology. That one's doing really well for us, isn't it? That's like, you've got the Spotify numbers. That one's one of our best ones, isn't it?
Yeah, that recently passed. Like Liquid Earth US was the first one that kind of shot up for us leading up to Rivera Fest. And I know the reason that Twilight is rising is because Symphony always asks for it. It's Toby's daughter's name.
Toby's daughter is really upping our numbers for us, which helps. That's the real. That's why that's why people make all those like really bad kids shows, because they know that kids don't care and they're gonna just watch it 7 times in a row. But we do that except with good music.
Because unless Toby is simultaneously in the US, Australia, Germany, Switzerland,
right.
Finland, Greece, I think I think that it's maybe just a couple numbers, I hope.
Yeah. No, it'd be pretty amazing if she listened to it that many times, but still, it's though I think we had said, actually, I think it was something to do with Marvel that had dropped around the same time, something that had people talking about, or had people looking at a Monomarth. Yeah. So I think it's actually something to do with that. But yeah, that one's actually doing really well for us, and I think it's the only cover we have up. As I mean, obviously, Sexy Back is not our version of that is not going to go up anywhere. But
that's okay.
Yeah, but like I said, we got Duality on the way. Is that's going to be kind of like the whole reason we thought about doing that is because I made those kegs, and the whole reason I made those kegs was for Lion's Den, which we did earlier this year, which was like one of the much more infrequent collab smashes that we get now.
And Lion's Den was it was the prompt was new metal, but I wanted to do something in the style of Slipknot.
Yeah. Let's loosely interpret new metal as an excuse to make a Slipknot song.
Yeah, no, that one started with Taylor sending over 2 guitar riffs. The first one was the intro, that do 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 do, and then the other one was the verse. So then I'm like, we have a song right there. All I have to do is just put rests in the first riff, and that's the pre-chorus, and then just the chords with no power chords as the chorus. Same with the breakdown, and that's your song.
And I had a lot of fun working on the percussion. So the version that's up, the version that you're going to hear on Apple Music and everything, does not have the kegs on it, because this was before I had the chance to actually make them. But it was for this song, we were going through like, oh, we should put kegs on this. You know, it's Slipknot inspired. You got to have the Slipknot guys. And I mean, kegs are like one of the best impacts. You know, those sound so cool. It's one of the favorite things I've done with True North Audio now. I'm so proud of those kegs, man. But we were looking around, it's like, we can't really find any kegs. Like, there was one guy who put out some samples, but there's no, like, the download link for his one shots didn't work anymore. And there was like a found sound thing library somewhere, and I think it was just like really expensive for like a few hits. And so I ended up like making the sound out of, I want to say it was Damage. It was one of those libraries from Native Instruments that has like a lot of metal noises, and it had like 55-gallon drums and dumpsters and things like that. So I just layered that, and then I used the little keg, the mini keg, the one that Toby and I did like a couple of years ago, and just kind of made my own as best I could out of that. But I said, like, we need a real keg, and now we got one, and I'm really excited about that. And you can go buy that at truenorthaudio.com. I'm sorry, truenorthaudio.co.uk.
I was pulling up all the samples, and you start at, it looks like you have, I know the number is going to be way more than this, but you have, it's like 1,292. And depending on like the note and the velocity, it could be 4 times those amount of samples.
It's, I think the total number of samples is nearly or over 20,000 for the whole instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's,
it is insane.
It's 6 round robin groups. It's a lot of velocity layers, and it is a lot of hits. And it is just like, we got a corny keg, we got a full keg, and we got the 55-gallon drum, which sounded really cool. And there was supposed to be even more. We started with 10 mics and only finished with 5. So it nearly ended up being double the number of samples just for the number of mics we had. Like, I like to offer variety, and I also like to offer dynamic range. You know, like for the things that you can record on the edge of silence, I have them really, like, the lightest taps are very quiet. The heaviest hits are very hard. We like, you know, some of the quietest ones barely pick up. They're almost felt. And some of the loudest ones, like in the room, they were peaking at like 118, 120 decibels, you know, which is one of the reasons that we had the mic problems. A lot of the mics ended up getting cut because they were clipping. They just couldn't handle the sound level that we were working at, but I mean, Lion's Den, that's the reason we had it. And that's the reason I was smashing the keg up on that stage and we played that show last month, and I'm getting more because I'm kind of hooked on the keg. And then I got some like marching snares and stuff in there as well, which I'm really stoked on. But yeah, those keg impacts just, that hits.
And that's the fun thing about listening to the song is you'll hear the snare and then you'll hear where you're expecting a snare, but you have impacts instead.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it just, man, you guys showed me the video from Riviera Fest and you guys had a pit to that. People were moving. I wish I could have been there for that one. Like that song is energy. That's one of my other favorites. That's one I show to people these days. It's just like, oh, you're in a band? Like, all right, so forgive the stupid name, but
yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat there.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those like, I kind of like that we have the stupid name because it helps us to not take ourselves too seriously. Because I think if we did have a serious name, we'd probably have more like, but I mean, does it feel like it like represents it? Like, anytime we start overthinking it, we can go, guys, we're in a band called Bloody Pineapples. Let's not overthink this,
My other favorite thing is that it's memorable.
Oh yeah.
You and I were at the merch booth before the show when, you'd have people walk in, see Bloody Pineapples on the shirt and be like,
get
wow,
mad about the autographs and flip us. No.
No, but then once we get off stage, you see their faces change. It's like, okay, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, like, no, 100%. People are just like
completely turns tide.
It's one of those things where it's a good top of mind if you're going to talk about it in marketing terms. But I mean, it's like we didn't think we were going to be a real band when we named it. It was a joke. I mean, it was just like, again, going back to John Maciel, his big thing. And if you've seen like the URM YouTube, his big thing was the discussion, the argument, pineapple on pizza, yes or no. And so that became kind of the thing. And I think the original, so he's pro pineapple. So if we call it pineapples, then we're gonna win some points with him. Surely he'll have to pick us and put us on the poll for being pineapples, right? And then he'll put us on the poll just like he puts us on the pizza. But Toby's allergic to pineapples, and we were trying to go for like a name that was like the team was like half British, half English, or like half American. We were like going for, what's going to be a team name that like represents like the Yanks and the Brits or whatever. So the Bloody Pineapples ended up just kind of sticking for some reason. So it's like partly because Toby was allergic and partly is like a holdover from trying to have like a Britishism and some kind of Americanism, which I guess was pineapples. But,
I guess that makes sense. You think it'd be tea, but no.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like it accidentally stuck. And it's like, well, I mean, the name is dumb, but who cares? Like I said, we don't take ourselves too seriously because we're still putting out sick music. I mean, at the same time, like think about all the like, metalcore bands from, the late 2000s who were putting out sick songs called like Swords, Dragons, and Diet Coke, or Reptar, King of the Ozone, or Tastes Like Kevin Bacon, or something. Like, I Wrestled a Bear Once slaps too. And I mean, who's going to name their band I Wrestled a Bear Once? Who's going to put out a song called Alaskan Flounder Basket or whatever it was, like if you make good music, who cares? Like there's no point in taking it too seriously. Just do your thing, and I think that's kind of the relief of Bloody Pineapples is like, we stick with the name. We can just be silly.
It's also fun because like behind me, all of the shows that I played with them, I have like the posters framed and hung up on the wall.
Nice.
So it's cool to see that not only where it started a year ago, but now opening for Chaosium,
which is
but
awesome.
then also getting the posters like printed at Staples and go to a framing place. It's like, okay, it's a tour. Did you see them or are you in one? And I'm like, yep, pineapples. And then just see exactly.
Yeah.
Just see that on the receipt. I'm like, this is awesome.
I love that.
And then like when you go and pick it up, they're like, hey, I listened to that. That does not match you at all. I'm like, but it stuck, right?
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's like when we had the merch for this show, some of our stickers were misprinted backwards, like mirrored. And, a lot of bands are like, man, this sucks. But my first thought was like, oh man, this is so stupid. I love it. And so I slapped one like in the bathroom at the venue. I gave away a couple of them to some of my buddies. Like, I don't care where you put this, put it somewhere stupid, just put it somewhere. And I think I've still got at least one of them in my room somewhere. Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those, like, we can just have fun with that. You know, I stuck, I think we got the Bloody Pineapple really high up on that pole in the middle of the venue too. I think we got top billing there.
Yeah, it's funny that what's fun for us is now like being covered by Loudwire when it's done to Slipknot.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like,
if you guys didn't hear about that, they misprinted the album title on their CDs and vinyls.
Yeah, it was the album I think is called The End So Far, and I think they titled it The End for Now or something like. It's like I see. I'm looking at that and like, get those now. Those are going to be collector's items, man. That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's no different than Ride the Lightning when that was printed in green.
Exactly. So I mean, it's like, you know, for us, we get that and we're just like, screw it. I guess the album has 2 titles now, you know, and just having fun with it. You know, I mean, it's like, I joked about like the number of bands that used to like, you know, when you're hanging out with a band and they just never get past their, you know, they never get past the working title for the song. We just never got past the working title for the band.
Yeah, the songs are there. We can always change the band name later.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who cares, you know? I mean, if Electric Callboy could change their name with the hype they have, and I mean, they had to put so much more effort into it than we would. So, I mean, if they can do it, why can't we? But, I mean, I still like Bloody Pineapples. I mean, we can also just start another band that's just all the same people, but under a serious name and with a serious image or whatever, too. I mean, who cares? Why not, you know? Why not just have 2 bands? There's so many of us, it wouldn't be hard to do. We're pumping out music left and right. I mean, it's like we started off with this album like, oh man, maybe we'll do like 10 tracks, and I think we got like 14 now, you know?
If it works, it works, and the audience seems to love it, so...
Yeah. I mean, it's like one of our best songs is Was bin ich. We're a mostly American. We got one German guy in the band, and he's not even in the band when we wrote this song. But Was bin ich, I mean, it's in German. So that one, the prompt was Rammstein, shocker, you know. But it was like we had one guy who had like, I think Zeke said he had a German wife, ? I'm trying to remember.
I know he works as a translator in German.
You know, Jay, if I remember right, has lived in Germany, but he's not from Germany, but he's studied German. And I lived in Germany, though I'm really rusty on my German, you know, so it's just kind of like a bunch of people who've been to Germany wrote a German song. And it's one of those, like, it's so out of place, you know, like we have such a wide variety of songs, but for whatever reason, when you have a song in a different language, it's way more jarring than when you have a song in a different style. You know, that's when it suddenly becomes like, is this the same band? Even though it's the same vocalist we have on other tracks.
But that's also the beauty of it, because like whenever the Brock Inspector gets released, it's going to sound like we have Adam Warren on the track.
Yeah.
We don't, but that's what I try to do my best to replicate.
I think that one's going to be sick. I can't wait for people to hear. And that's, you know, that's the other thing. There's so many of these tracks we have that I just go, man, I love sharing. Like when people ask now, like, oh, you know, what's your band called? What do you got? I'm just like, man, where do I start? Okay, let me compile a list. You got to bear with me. Here's Slain in Rage. Here's Was bin ich. Here's Trying, like, whatever. Like, it's just like, look, I know it's a lot of songs, but they're all very different. And I'm proud of all of them.
Yeah, because like we don't have one song.
It's like, where do you introduce people to us? Yeah.
Well, that's also the beauty of it. We don't have a single song that could fully represent what we can do. Because like a lot of bands, you go back to like the metalcore era. It's like, okay, verse, chorus, breakdown, and that's the formula.
Yeah.
With us, it's completely different. It depends on what the song asks for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, it's part of the fact that we were writing for songwriting competition. So it is like, you're going to sound very different when one song is supposed to be Deftones and one is supposed to be Static X and one's supposed to be, you know, Rammstein. But at the same time, it's like, we also just kind of have our own style. Was bin ich is very Rammstein. Like, people listen to that and think Rammstein. Rammstein gets recommended now when people get that on like shuffles and playlists and stuff. It gets associated. It's an easy association. I mean, we went for the vein of Slipknot as an influence for Lion's Den, and you can hear that, but it's not a Slipknot song. You know, it's its own thing. Same thing with pretty much anything. I mean, like Strange Eons, you know, that's, you know, it's got a little bit of that influence, but it's still just, it's Strange Eons. It's its own thing entirely. This whole podcast is just going to be me gushing about the things I love about working with Bloody Pineapples. But I mean, how can you not? You know?
I'm cool.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just really just you and I, like, just talking about something that we do together for fun, you know? And yeah, I mean, it's like you're the first guest on the podcast. It's like, this is a guy that I've actually worked with. This is my own project. So I'm not just like, you know, picking the brain of somebody else about something they made, you know, or just gear chatting. Like, this is us, like, sharing this, you know, like I get to talk about this album, my experience with it just as much as you.
Along with that, how you were mentioning like the different influences we have, we all agree on the prompt, and then that's when our influences come out in our respective roles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the prompt for the record isn't even a band or anything. We just said, like, why don't we do dumb heavy riffs with synths? That's our prompt. And that can mean so many things, but that's our prompt. That's what we've agreed upon. And we're going to have a ton of different interpretations of what that means, but it's going to be awesome. Brockenspector is going to be very different from, I don't know if we have a name for Is This Killswitch yet. So, spoiler, we have a track that we're working title Is This Killswitch. It's going to be a little Killswitchy. I'm excited for this record, man. I know you are.
Just a matter of time. All we do is release the Brockenspector next and then go from there.
Yeah.
That one's going to be so interesting to play live, to say the least.
Oh, man, it really is.
I can't imagine looking Tim in the eye and saying, "Hey, Tim, here's the double bass pattern I did. I'm so sorry."
He seems to pick that stuff up pretty quick, though. I'll tell you what, Tim is a real talented drummer. I think that
he is.
If there's someone you're going to give it to, it might as well be Tim. And I'll tell you what, one of the things I'm looking forward to, I mean, again, going back to all the things we plan on doing, one of the things I'm really looking forward to is like bringing guests on, you know?
Yeah, and that's one thing I'm both excited and kind of nervous about. Because like when you bring a guest, like you can tell them kind of same as us, where here's the prompts, but then it could either go in a direction that could complement it, or they kind of add their own voice and maybe it blends with ours.
Yeah, I think it's going to be all right. I mean, I feel like in the same way, like we're so used to working as such a big chaotic mess that if there's any band that's adaptable enough to just bring people in and not know what to expect, it's us, I think. You know, if you're a band of 4 or 5 people and you got your own like style really hard nailed down, I think that definitely is a lot more of a concern. But I mean, for us, it's like we really could just kind of go wherever we want with it, you know? And I feel like that openness, that, you know, you can't define us with one songness of it, really gives us the opportunity to like, we really can just bring in any number of different people. I mean, one of my guests is really awesome metal guitar player who's also like really into that like crazy energetic like hyper pop sound. You know, like one of her influences is, you know, what am I saying? Like one of her influences is like Monuments and another one is Sophie, you know? Like you listen to the two of those, it's very different things, but I'll tell you what, you combine the two of those and whatever it's going to turn out to be, it's going to fit dumb heavy with synths.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great chatting. Thank you for joining me, Luke, and we'll definitely have you back on. And we'll have to get more of the Bloody Pineapples on just for, you know, maybe we'll do another like gear chat or something like I did with Vasily, and we'll just get a few of us in and just vibe. This is the first Bloody Pineapples episode I've done, but you're technically the 4th Bloody Pineapple to actually be on the show. So it seems inevitable that we're going to have to bring more people on. It's just a good network of people to chat with because everyone's going to have something else to add.
Yeah, we could just do it kind of Rob Scallon style. 1st of October, we have the 8th of October.
There you go, right? The 8th.
Actually, the 1st of October, that's when the EP dropped, isn't it?
It is, yeah. That was when we actually... So we're also just past the 1-year anniversary of that as well. 1 week on. Eagerly awaiting for the next videos for Rob and Andrew. I honestly, they have some real Bloody Pineapples energy. Well, thank you for coming on. It's been great conversation. I think we are probably close to where we were in the length of the last one as well. So we definitely not hurting for plenty of great conversation. Well, everybody, I will see you next time. I've got a few people lined up, and I got some fun surprises coming up for the podcast. You guys stay tuned, and hopefully soon we'll actually have this up on other listening platforms outside of YouTube. I'm working on that as well. And go to truenorthaudio.co.uk. Go pick up that keg. I'm really proud of it. Could use the support. Put a lot of work into it. It was a lot of fun to make. Worked on it with Vasily, who was my last guest. That'll be us signing off. Peace.
Later.